Hello, my name is Madison Teague, and today we will be talking about the ovarian cycle. Now, the ovarian cycle is responsible for what we know more commonly as the menstrual cycle. And before we dive into the cycle, I want to give a brief overview of where these processes will take place. So we'll start with the ovaries, which are where the eggs are first formed. Now, referring to the diagram, the ovaries are the two bulbous structures on either side of the uterus here. This is where the primary oocytes, which are destined for ovulation, will develop. The primary oocytes will complete meiosis I just before ovulation to form a secondary oocyte. The secondary oocyte is then ejected from the ovary. Fimbriae at the end of the uterine tubes will sweep the secondary oocyte into the uterine tube where it has a better chance to be fertilized. The first stage of the cycle is the transition from primordial follicle on the left to primary follicle on the right. The primordial follicles shown here consist of a single layer of follicle cells surrounding the oocyte. Now, as a quick side note, the eggs shown here represent a woman's complete set of eggs. Unlike men who produce millions of sperm each day, women have a finite number of eggs and do not continually produce them. As the primordial follicle transitions to the primary follicle, additional layers of follicle cells build up around the oocyte. We refer to these additional layers as granulosa cells. In the next phase, the primary follicle will transition to a secondary follicle. The secondary follicle is structurally similar to the primary follicle, however, the secondary follicle now has fluid-filled spaces between cell layers. The fluid-filled space of the secondary follicle expands, the zona pellucida is formed, and the follicle is now referred to as a Graafian follicle, shown here. Enzymes within the Graafian follicle then break down the cell wall and the oocyte is released. The ejection of the oocyte from the Graafian or mature follicle is referred to as ovulation. The ovulated oocyte is swept into the uterine tube where it implants in the endometrium or the inner lining of the uterine wall to await fertilization. A few important things to note about the ovarian cycle are the phases and hormones dictating these processes. The cycle is 28 days in total. Beginning from the primordial follicle all the way to the mature follicle includes the first 13 days, also known as the follicular phase. Ovulation occurs on day 14. The remaining 14 days encompass the luteal phase, which is the formation of the corpus luteum from the ruptured follicle. From the diagram, we can track the levels of several hormones that influence the different stages of the cycle. Notice the peak in estrogen right before ovulation and the peaks in luteinizing hormone and follicle-stimulating hormone at ovulation. After ovulation, we see a peak in progesterone and a gradual increase in estrogen. This concludes the end of our presentation. We hope you enjoyed the video and learned a little more about the key features of the ovarian cycle. Thanks for watching!